If we look at the region itself, the Near East and North Africa, it's characterized mainly by the water scarcity, one of the driest region, and it has also important drivers like conflict, urbanization, demography. All these drivers are putting pressure on the economic and the socio-economic factors, in addition to the environmental and the natural resources scarcity and pressures. For smallholder farmers in the region, we are at the crossroad, because to face all this complexity of challenges and looking ahead, we have to develop some robust and comprehensive R&D plans looking forward. So we need to develop agricultural technologies, but we need also to look beyond technology to see how do we look at the system as a whole, how do we integrate all those components and the livelihood of the women and the men and the youth in the region. Part of this issue related to nutrition and diet is also cultural. For an Egyptian or a Moroccan, bread, for instance, is part of not only of their diet, but it's also part of the culture. I think we need to keep that in mind. Of course, there is an effort in diversification that is happening already in the region. I don't think we need to start it from scratch. The region, if you look at its all diversity, because it's not homogeneous, going from Mauritania, Morocco, Algeria to Libya and the East, is a whole diversity of different farming systems and different commodities. Of course, cereals still have a role, so we have the wheat and the barley and all that, but we also have important staples and food crops like legume crops. And if you look, for instance, the importance of faba bean in Egypt, or the importance of chickpeas or other pulses in the region, they also have very high importance. And our work has to look at how to integrate all these components. How do we integrate our work on the farming systems with the aspects on nutrition, on diversification, and so on. Trees are important, for instance, as well. You look at, this is the region that is also kind of a center of genetic diversity. If you look at olive or fig in the Middle East, in all the Fertile Crescent. So we have also to look at trees, we have to look at livestock. The agro-pastoral system, for instance, is very important in our region, and we have to look at issues related to small ruminants and the production of all the livestock systems in the region as well.
In many
I think, again, as we said, the region has already started moving towards diversification, because some countries are also producing for export. If you look, for instance, in Tunisia or Morocco, there is a lot of work on the value chains. And now we're developing new production systems where, as you know, we're using also innovation technologies in producing a new product for the market, where if you can look around here in Morocco or in Tunisia, you would see strawberries, you would see now even avocados, and you see what's not. I mean, diversification is already happening. We don't have to start it. I think what you mentioned is how can we look at the policy issue from the side not only on the value chain, but also the focus on smallholders I think this is where we still have some challenges. When you go to remote areas where you still have small holding farmers and sometimes in very challenging conditions, and that's where I think the work of ICARDA and its partners and FAO and others has to make a difference. It's also bringing up those regions that are left out, what we can call the hinterland sometimes. But in the same time, as you can see, this region is also moving ahead into the agricultural transformation processes. It's already happening. This will be really a good opportunity for building synergies. If we look, for instance, at the region, the target region of ICARDA, which is the dry areas, where there is a lot of commonalities with what you have, for instance, in the dry tropics. So, for instance, the region where ICRISAT or some of the other CGIAR centers like IITA or CIMIT or others, I think and I believe is an opportunity now to bring all that together. The know-how, the experience, the lessons learned, you know, a lot of work that happens, for instance, in the desert areas of India can be of value in North Africa and vice versa. And I think as we are now obviously in a world that is more and more globalized, I think the CGIAR should also move in trying to put its act together to serve better the smallholder farmers in the regions. So I think so. From my perspective, the CGIAR centers has started more than 5 decades ago, and I think when it started, it did a great job in addressing the challenges in the 60s and the 70s and what's so-called the Green Revolution. Now I think the conditions have changed all across, and now we're in a new phase. So I think it's logical that we need to adjust also the strategies and to look forward and how do we take into account the new realities of the farming systems and the livelihoods of the smallholders in regions, and see how we could organize ourselves in a better way to serve those communities. In agroecology as a framework, in my mind, it's not new, because if you start looking at the components within what we call now agroecology, we have been working on that. When you work on water use efficiency, where you work on improving nutrient use efficiency, where you're looking at sustainable production systems and sustainable food and agricultural systems, you are indeed moving towards agroecological positions. Now, of course, what FAO has done in the recent years, they have developed this framework further to clarify the principles and the guidelines on agroecology. Of course, this is not one recipe or one size fits all. We have to still adjust it to the context of the regions and the countries, but it provides an overall framework for developing these new practices and policies and governance, because it's not now just linking agroecology as a practice for soil or water, but looking beyond that, how do we integrate all this in a comprehensive manner that looks at improving productivity and sustainability and minimizing the effects on the environment. And this is timely also because we're putting this in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals towards the 2030 agenda. Now we're basically about a decade where we have to deliver and achieve some of our SDG targets on food and hunger, nutrition, health, environment, climate, you name it. And agroecology can provide us tools and ways to achieve that. And that's basically the whole idea now.
And
The way we look at this, we have to look at agroecology as a transition. As a transition from the current systems. And the current systems, as we know, they are not yet optimal. There's a lot of inefficiencies sometimes we can find in the system. So what research has to do is to bridge that gap between the current situation and looking forward and see how we can improve that. But of course, again, there is hardly a recipe that can across the whole region. I think if we want to look at the principles of agroecology and look at the new priorities for research, there is plenty of space there. But we have to put this in the local context of the farming systems we have. And I think DryArc, as I can see, has already that in its objectives, because it's trying to look at the different farming systems in the dry areas and look at the specifics for each one of those farming systems. If you're looking at the irrigated system, you might have a different set of research priorities. For instance, how to improve the efficiency, water use, and the policy and the governance is also related to it. If you look at the agro-pastoral, again, you're going to have a whole series of issues. And if you look at the rain-fed system, same on. So I think this is it. We have to look at the specifics of each farming systems and see how we can implement some of those guidance in agroecology. And from there, we can then have a set of research priorities for the future. When the countries have signed on the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, we still had 15 years ahead for the delivering on the Agenda 2030. Now, as time passes on, we look ahead and we see that we are basically about 10 growing seasons. If you talk to agronomists, that's about it. And so we start, and I think the world now starts realizing the urgency. If we are serious about developing and achieving on some of those targets of the SDGs, we better start now. And that's my sense of how we should go about it.